It's like, remember those after-school specials, the ones
Yeah.
we used to watch?
Yeah.
Always a little over the top, teenagers getting into trouble, making bad choices. Well, it seems like lately, real life is taking a page from those scripts, and not in a good way.
Right?
We're seeing more and more cases of teens involved in serious crimes, even murder. It really leaves you wondering, like, what on earth is going on with kids these days?
It's a question a lot of people are asking, and rightfully so. These cases are shocking, disturbing. Really, they force us to confront a very unsettling reality. But to really understand what's going on, we need to go beyond just the headlines, and the initial shock value, and take a deeper look at the factors, all the factors that contribute to these situations.
Right, and that's exactly what we're going to do in this deep dive. We're going to examine 3 cases,
Okay.
each one a tragic story. And they all have their own unique set of circumstances, but they raise questions about culpability, about justice, and what might lead a young person down such a dark path.
Yeah, by exploring these individual cases, we can start to see some patterns emerge, some common threads that connect these seemingly isolated incidents,
Right.
and hopefully provide a more nuanced understanding of this really complex issue.
Okay, so let's start with a case that really grabbed my attention. It's out of Ohio, and it involves a 17-year-old girl, Caitlin Coons. She's been accused of murdering her boyfriend's mother.
Okay.
But here's the twist. Her boyfriend, Jonathan Jones, was 33 years old.
The age difference, just right off the bat, is a huge red flag.
Yeah.
It immediately makes you think about power dynamics and the potential for manipulation, right?
Yeah.
Was this young girl a willing participant in this horrific crime? Or was she being influenced, even coerced by someone much older, someone with a history of taking advantage of her? Because, and this is important, they started dating when she was only 15.
Wow.
And he was actually charged with crimes related to their relationship back then.
So he was already in trouble with the law
Right.
for being involved with her when she was underage, and then this happens. It just makes the whole situation even more disturbing.
It certainly adds another layer of complexity to an already tragic case. And the details of the murder itself are pretty chilling. She allegedly used a rock to kill his mother while he was in the house, and then, get this, they fled to Mexico together. But you're not going to believe this. He was wearing an ankle monitor from his previous charges.
An ankle monitor. You can't make this stuff up. It makes you wonder if they really thought they could get away with it, or if there was some level of desperation, maybe even like a twisted sense of invincibility at play.
That's a really good question, and it gets to the heart of what we're trying to understand here. Where does youthful impulsivity end and calculated malice begin? And how much influence did this older man have over her actions? Was she a victim herself, or was she a willing accomplice? It's a tangled web for sure.
Yeah, it is. Let's move on to our second case. This one takes us to Texas. It involves another 17-year-old, Natalie Navarro. This case really highlights how social media can intersect with real-life crime.
Yeah.
And it starts with an Amber Alert. Natalie goes missing, everyone's worried, but then she turns up, and
Right.
she's charged with capital murder.
It's a wild turn of events, and it really underscores the importance of being cautious about jumping to conclusions based on initial reports.
Exactly.
What we learned later is that Natalie allegedly met the victim, Arturo Pena, online and conspired with a 21-year-old named Yordi Martinez to rob him. And during the robbery, Arturo was fatally shot.
So she wasn't actually kidnapped. The whole Amber Alert was a misdirection.
That's what it seems like, though the details around that aspect of the case are still a bit murky. But what is clear is that social media played a significant role in connecting these individuals and facilitating this crime.
It makes you think about how easy it is for young people to get caught up in dangerous situations online, especially when you factor in the influence of someone older, like this Yordi character. And speaking of adults who make questionable choices, let's shift gears to a case that takes us out of the realm of violent crime and into the world of reality TV. Remember Todd and Julie Chrisley from Chrisley Knows Best?
Oh, yes, the picture-perfect family with the charming Southern patriarch.
Right.
It was quite a shock when they were found guilty of bank fraud and tax evasion. But what's been making headlines lately are the conditions of their imprisonment.
Right. Their daughter, Savannah, has been very vocal about the tough time they're having behind bars. She's talking about mold, asbestos, even snakes in their cells.
It's certainly not the glamorous lifestyle they portrayed on their show. Their lawyers are pushing for home confinement and reduced sentences, arguing that their current conditions are inhumane, and it's sparked a lot of debate about whether their punishment is proportionate to their crimes, especially when you compare it to the kinds of sentences people receive for violent offenses.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it? Is there a different standard for white-collar criminals, even when their actions have serious consequences for others? And where do we draw the line between punishment and rehabilitation? It's a really complicated issue, and I'm curious to get your take on it.
I think it's important to remember that the purpose of the justice system is multifaceted, right? It's about holding people accountable for their actions, yes, but it's also about protecting society and ideally rehabilitating offenders
Yeah.
so they can reintegrate into society as productive citizens.
Right.
Whether the Chrisley's punishment fits those goals is certainly a matter of debate.
And it's a debate worth having because it gets to the heart of some pretty fundamental questions about justice and fairness. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about some of the broader factors that might be contributing to this alarming trend of teen crime. We've seen
Yes.
how adults can play a role both positive and negative.
Right.
But what about societal influences? What are some of the things that experts are pointing to as potential root causes?
Well, one factor that consistently comes up is the pervasive influence of social media and the internet.
Yeah.
Young people today are growing up in a digital world
Well-
that's just saturated with images, information, and let's be honest, a lot of negativity. And research has shown that exposure to violence in media, whether it's in video games, movies, or even news reports, can desensitize individuals to violence and make them more likely to engage in aggressive behavior.
It's like they're constantly bombarded with these extreme and often disturbing images. And it's hard to imagine that not having some kind of impact on their worldview and their behavior.
Exactly. And we saw how social media specifically played a role in Natalie Navarro's case.
Right.
She met her victim online, and the robbery appears to have been planned through social media platforms. It highlights how these online spaces can be used to facilitate criminal activity, especially among young people who might be more susceptible to manipulation or peer pressure.
It's a scary thought, really. It feels like it's getting harder and harder to protect kids from these negative influences, even if you're doing everything right as a parent.
Right.
But beyond social media, are there other societal influences that we should be concerned about?
Absolutely. Economic inequality and lack of opportunity are often cited as major contributing factors.
Okay.
When you have communities struggling with poverty, limited access to education and job training, and a general sense of hopelessness,
Yeah.
it creates an environment where criminal activity can seem like the only viable option for some young people.
So it's not just about bad choices or a lack of morals, it's about a lack of options, a sense that the system is rigged against them.
Precisely.
Mm.
And it's important to remember that we're not just talking about statistics here. We're talking about real people, young people with dreams and aspirations who are being failed by the very systems that should be supporting them.
It's heartbreaking to think about. And,
Yeah.
and it makes me wonder, what can we do about it? Are we just supposed to accept this as an inevitable consequence of modern society?
I don't think so. I believe that we can and must do better for our young people. And that starts with acknowledging the complex interplay of factors that contribute to these situations. We need to address socioeconomic disparities, invest in education and job training programs, and create communities that offer genuine opportunities for advancement.
It sounds like a tall order. But I agree, we can't just throw up our hands and say it's too complicated. We have to try. Right.
We absolutely have to try. And it's not just about societal changes, it's also about understanding the individual factors that can make a young person more vulnerable to criminal behavior.
You're talking about things like mental health issues, trauma, substance abuse.
Exactly. These are often underlying issues that can contribute to impulsive or destructive decisions. And unfortunately, many young people who are struggling with these challenges don't have access to adequate mental health services.
So early intervention and access to mental health care are crucial.
Absolutely. Identifying and addressing these issues early on can make a world of difference in a young person's life trajectory. It's about giving them the tools and support they need to cope with challenges, make healthy choices, and build a positive future for themselves.
Okay, so we've talked about societal influences and individual factors, but let's circle back to the role of adults. We saw in Caitlin Kuhn's case how a much older boyfriend was directly involved in her crime, and in the Chrisley case, how the parents' actions landed them in serious legal trouble. It seems like adults can have a huge impact on young people's lives, for better or for worse.
You're absolutely right. And it raises some important questions about adult accountability and the potential for exploitation. In Caitlin's case, you have to wonder, was this older man truly in love with her, or was he manipulating her, taking advantage of her vulnerability? And in the Chrisley case, while their children weren't directly involved in their crimes, you have to consider the impact their actions had on their family and their reputation.
It makes you think about the responsibility that comes with being an adult, the influence we have on the younger generation.
It's a responsibility we can't take lightly. And it's not just about setting a good example. It's about being actively involved in young people's lives, providing guidance, support, and a safe space for them to grow and learn. It's about recognizing that they're not just miniature adults, they're still developing, still figuring things out, and they need our help to navigate the complexities of the world.
So it's not just about punishing bad behavior. It's about preventing it in the first place by creating an environment where young people feel supported, valued, and empowered to make positive choices.
Exactly. It's about shifting our focus from reaction to prevention, from punishment to rehabilitation. It's about
Mhm.
understanding that these young people are not lost causes. They're individuals with potential, and it's our job as a society to help them reach that potential.
This has been a really insightful conversation, and I appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. But I have to ask, what can we as individuals do? It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of this problem, like our individual actions will make a difference. What advice would you give to our listeners who want to be part of the solution?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it, because the truth is we can all play a role in creating a more supportive and nurturing environment for young people. It starts with simple things like being a good listener, offering a helping hand, and showing genuine interest in their lives. If you have children or grandchildren, be present, be involved, and be a positive influence.
What about those of us who don't have children in our lives? Are there ways to get involved in the community and make a difference?
Absolutely. There are countless organizations that work with at-risk youth, providing mentoring, tutoring, and other support services. You can volunteer your time, donate to these organizations, or simply spread awareness about the challenges facing young people today.
It's about recognizing that these are not just other people's kids, they're all of our kids. And their well-being is a reflection of our society as a whole.
Exactly. And by working together, by showing compassion and understanding, and by investing in our young people, we can create a brighter future for all of us.
This has been a really powerful conversation.
Yeah.
I'm feeling inspired, but I also want to acknowledge the weight of this topic. It's a lot to process, and I imagine our listeners are feeling it too. Do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom for our audience as we wrap up this part of our deep dive?
I would just say don't give up hope. The challenges facing young people today are complex and daunting, but they're not insurmountable. Change is possible, but it requires a collective effort, a willingness to listen, learn, and work together to create a world where all young people have the opportunity to thrive.
Yeah, it's true. It's easy to get caught up in all the doom and gloom when we talk about this stuff, but I really appreciate your message of hope.
Yeah,
It's a good reminder that we can make a difference, even if it feels like a drop in the bucket sometimes.
I think that's so important to remember, yeah. We can't let the enormity of the problem just paralyze us. Every act of kindness, every effort to understand, every bit of support we offer, it can all have a ripple effect.
Okay, so let's talk about those ripples. In the last part, we discussed some potential solutions, like addressing economic disparities, improving access to mental health resources, and encouraging responsible adult behavior.
Mm.
But how do those broad concepts actually translate into, like, concrete actions? Where do we even begin?
Well, let's start with economic inequality, which is honestly a root cause of so many problems, right?
Right.
Including crime. So, programs that provide job training, educational opportunities, support for struggling families, these things can create pathways out of poverty and reduce the allure of criminal activity for those who feel like they have no other options.
So it's about investing in those communities that are being left behind, giving people the tools they need to succeed.
Exactly. And it's not just about financial investment, it's about social investment as well. Building strong community networks, creating mentorship programs, offering after-school activities. These can provide young people with a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, and that can make a huge difference.
What about mental health? We're going to talk about how important early intervention is, but how do we actually make that happen?
Schools can play a vital role, right?
Right.
By providing mental health screenings and counseling services. And it's not just about identifying kids who are struggling. It's about connecting them with the appropriate resources, whether it's therapy, medication, or support groups.
But not all kids are going to feel comfortable talking to a school counselor. What about those who just kind of fall through the cracks?
That's why it's so important to ensure access to affordable and culturally competent mental health care in the community. We need more therapists who understand the unique challenges facing young people. And we need to reduce the stigma surrounding mental health so that seeking help is seen as a sign of strength, not weakness.
Okay, so we're tackling poverty, we're boosting mental health resources. What about the adults in the equation? How do we ensure that they're part of the solution, not the problem?
Well, education is key, right? Parents, teachers, coaches, youth group leaders, and anyone who works with young people, they need to be aware of the risks, the warning signs of teen involvement in crime.
So being able to spot the red flags early on
Hmm.
and knowing how to intervene effectively.
Exactly. There are programs that train adults on positive youth development, conflict resolution, and how to create supportive environments for teens. And it's not just about preventing negative behavior, it's about fostering positive behavior, encouraging healthy relationships, and building resilience.
It sounds like a lot of work,
Yeah.
but it also sounds incredibly hopeful. I mean, are there examples of communities or programs that are successfully implementing these kinds of solutions?
Absolutely. There are communities all over the country that are seeing real results by taking a holistic approach to youth development. They're investing in early childhood education, creating safe spaces for teens, providing job training, mentorship opportunities, addressing those root causes of crime like poverty and lack of opportunity.
That's really encouraging to hear. But what about the teens who are already in the system? What happens to those who have already made mistakes and are facing the consequences?
That's where rehabilitation becomes crucial. The juvenile justice system should focus on education, job training, counseling, and reintegration into society, not just punishment.
So giving these kids a second chance, not just locking them up and throwing away the key.
Exactly. It's about understanding that young people are capable of change and growth. And by providing them with the right support and opportunities, we can help them turn their lives around.
This has been a truly eye-opening conversation. I'm feeling a mix of emotions, sadness for the victims of these crimes, concern for the young people who are struggling, but also a renewed sense of hope that we can make a difference. What would you say is the most important takeaway for our listeners today?
I think the most important takeaway is that we can't afford to be complacent. The issues surrounding teen crime, they're complex and multifaceted, but they're not unsolvable. It requires a collective effort, a commitment to understanding, and a willingness to invest in our young people. And when we do that, when we create communities where young people feel supported, valued, and empowered, we all benefit.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same way. We've covered a lot of ground, from those heartbreaking cases to the factors that contribute to teen crime and the potential solutions that offer hope for a brighter future. Thank you for joining us on this journey and for caring enough to want to understand this really complex and challenging issue. Be sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more thought-provoking conversations just like this one.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, even small actions can make a big difference. Let's all do our part to create a world where every young person has the opportunity to thrive.